2 months out from the Iowa caucus, the Democratic primary field is not getting any smaller. In fact, the pool of candidates is expanding. But as the criteria to qualify for the debates become stricter and stricter, what becomes of the candidates who have not made the cut? Joining me now from Iowa, 2020 presidential candidate and spiritual author and lecturer, Marianne Williamson. Marianne, always good to see you. You've been living in Iowa.
Good to see you. Thank you.
You've been living in Iowa. How are you speaking to voters there? And what is your strategy to get enough of them to support you in the polls to get you back on the debate stage?
I don't think in terms of strategy to get back on the debate stage. Michael Bloomberg is now in the race. He's not on the debate stage. You know, Katy, this debate stage is like a reality TV show. That's all that it is. What matters is the conversation that we are having with the American people. And some of the most important conversations, certainly that I'm having, are not on that debate stage. And when you ask about Iowa, one of the most important conversations has to do with what agribusiness has done to the U.S. farmer. You know, throughout our society, whether it has to do with health insurance companies or big pharmaceutical companies or gun manufacturers or chemical companies or agribusiness or oil and gas or defense contractors. It's as though a corporate aristocracy has corrupted our government and hijacked our value system. And nowhere is this more destructive than in Iowa. Because what has happened is a devastation of the U.S. farmer, a devastation of the land. We have farmers who are committing suicide. We have bankruptcies that are exploding. And this has led to such a lack of crop diversification. It has poisoned our food supply. It has contaminated our water because of all of the animal factory farming. And the agencies that were set up, you know, years ago, the U.S. government would be protecting the farmer. But ever since the 1970s and 80s, the government in this area, as in so many, does more to advocate for and protect the corporate overlords than it does to protect and advocate for the U.S. citizen. So what you have here is a disempowering of the agencies, in this case, the Food and Drug Administration and the USDA, to the point you can see today, it's all over the news, where the president is actually, he's dismantling some of the power of the USDA because the scientists who are coming up and the economists who are coming up with results that do not match the president's pro-corporatist policies are actually being moved out of Washington. This is an area where
I think that you're making a lot of solid points. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on to talk about this was because of an answer you gave on one of the debate stages. You were talking about our agriculture and our food supply and how it's not being addressed adequately. It's not being addressed by the other candidates in the same way that you're addressing it right here. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. You have an agriculture plan. You say you want to increase food inspectors. You want to support small and local family farms, to support sustainable farming and agriculture, double the value of SNAP benefits when used toward the purchase of fresh produce. That's really key because right now a lot of those food stamps do not allow you to buy fresh produce. They're not valuable enough to buy fresh produce and stuff like that. Ban advertising of junk food that targets children. Revamp animal cruelty laws to focus on farm foods. Why do you think that you are the best candidate to address these issues?
It's not that I'm the best, it's that I'm the only candidate who's addressing these issues. And I'm the only candidate who's talking about the connection of these issues to health care. We're having a conversation about health care that treats the symptom but doesn't get into the cause. If we're going to talk about root cause, we have to discuss why are Americans so sick? Why do we have such a higher level of chronic illness in our country than in other countries of comparable wealth? And the reason is because of all the contaminants in our water.
So
the reason is because of all the carcinogens in our food. And the toxins in our air, all of which go back to agribusiness, oil and gas, chemical companies.
How do you push back against that? If you were the president of the United States and you were competing in the field of ideas in Washington with the power of lobbyists, with the power of big corporate donors to presidential campaigns, to senatorial campaigns, congressional campaigns, how do you fight against that?
That's why you need someone like me, Katy, because I'm not part of that. That's the whole point.
I understand you're not part of it, but the rest of the people in Washington are part of it.
That's kind of my point, isn't it? So first of all, you start with your Secretary of Agriculture. Right now, Sonny Perdue, our Secretary of Agriculture, he's a total pro-corporatist type. He says, if you're not big, get out. This is a pro-corporatist government. And when we talk about a pro-corporatist government, people need to understand what this means. There is a virulent strain of capitalism. It's not capitalism itself, because I'm pro-capitalist, but this is a virulent strain of capitalism that has corrupted our government. It has gained control and ascendance ever since the 1980s. And what it does is to make short-term profits for corporate stockholders more important than the U.S. citizen. We're not a government of the people, by the people, and for the people anymore. We're a government of, by, and for these huge multinational corporate entities.
So
now,
do you reform campaign finance
like
laws?
A Teddy Roosevelt.
Do you reform campaign finance laws? Do you ban lobbyists?
Absolutely. Yes, because that's the cancer underlying all the cancers. All the undue influence of these corporate money on our government is the cancer underlying all the other cancers. You and I both know that it's not reasonable to think that Citizens United is going to be overturned anytime soon, but we can have federal funding. We can have federal funding of all public funding of all federal campaigns, which is the first legislation I would submit. And ultimately, we need a constitutional amendment. Until we get the money out of politics, that's the dirty poison underneath all of this.
Can I ask you one fun question before we go? And I'd love to have you back on another time as well. But I read the profile of you by Taffy Brodesser-Akner in the New York Times, and I just thought it was a brilliant profile of you, and it brought a lot more attention to you in a serious way that you had not been getting before that, at least on the political stage. At the end of her article, though, she says this, and I'm just very curious. There at her dining table, she leaned forward and said something that was beautiful to me about the way the universe restores order to itself. It was filled with the kinds of words that start memes. She asked that it stay off the record, but I wish she hadn't, because it did what it was supposed to do, girlfriend, which is that it helped me feel better.